see on the list. Darcy, could you introduce yourself and if there are any other directors, please?
Sure. Hi, I'm Darcy Perkins. I am a director at Gunnison County Electric. I represent District 3, which is between Gunnison and Crested Butte in the Almont area.
Thank you, Darcy. Mark, I'll let you introduce yourself next, and then the other staff jump in after Mark.
Yep, sure. Thanks, Mike. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mark Vanderveer, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer here at Gunnison County Electric Association.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Stober. I'm the Chief Operations Officer for Gunnison County Electric.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joe Gornick, Engineering Manager with GCEA.
Hi, I'm Allie Sagoon. I'm the Member Relations Supervisor at GCEA.
Hi, folks. My name is Sherry Shelton. I'm the Executive Assistant here at GCEA. Thanks for coming.
All right, thanks. I think that's all of the board and staff that I see. Hopefully we didn't miss anyone. Again, thank you for coming. Just want to point out, hopefully you had a little notice flash up on your screen. We are recording this meeting so that we've got this information available for others afterwards. But I want to make sure you know that. And Mark is going to do most of the presentation tonight. He'll reiterate, some of these points, but rate increases is something we hate to do. We only do it because we need to. I wish we didn't have to. Mark will offer some additional insight into that, so I won't steal his thunder, but thank you for coming, giving us an opportunity to answer your questions, to hear your concerns, and let's go ahead and get started. Mark?
Thank you, Mike. And just want to confirm, can everyone see the slide deck up on the screen? Okay, sounds like everybody can. Well, again, welcome everyone. And again, my name is Mark Vanderveer, and thank you for joining us for our member forum to give you a little bit more insight as to what are the drivers around our 2026 proposed rate increase that has been published and available on our website. So I guess I'll go right into the very first slide. What's changing in 2026? The biggest thing is that the 2026 GCA budget proposes a 7.2% on average rate increase effective January 1, 2026. And the biggest drivers for that increase are increases in costs around wholesale power costs, operations and maintenance costs, distribution systems, investments, replacements, and improvements. And this is mostly when you think of poles and wires, as well as the budget supports a modest operating margin of 1.9%, which is required to generate enough cash flow for covering debt service and our continued retirement of patronage capital. And like Mike was saying, we don't raise rates because we want to. We raise rates because the cost of providing reliable electric service is increasing. I'll go into that a little bit more in the next few slides. But again, it's not because we want to, it's that we have to equal our expenses. So why is this increase needed? Well, the costs are rising in several major areas. Number one, wholesale purchase power, and that is the largest cost driver. That's about 44% of our total cost for the co-op. We have operations and maintenance, which is required to maintain a reliable and safe system. We have business operations, which are people, systems, cybersecurity. That's our billing department, as well as our member services. And then we have depreciation and interest expense, which is primarily driven and tied to capital projects. And these are distribution replacements and upgrades. And I guess the main thing here is that these cost increases that we're seeing are not unique to GCA. They're being seen across the entire United States electric industry. And the next couple slides, just a little bit about what's going around the nation, not specific to GCA, but this is in general for the electric industry to give you some idea. This is a study that came out in a recent article in the New York Times that was talking about U.S. electricity prices continue steady increases. And the biggest thing to notice since 2022, and actually all along, electricity prices have increased the largest of anything among the other types of fuel sources, natural gases, gasoline, heating oil. And it actually, since 2023, has been outpacing the consumer price index. So you might ask, well, why is that? Some other recent articles that came out in the New York Times was this one where a gentleman from the founder of Powerlines, which is a nonprofit organization focused on actually modernizing utility regulations to cut power bills, made the statement that says, when you look at what's driving electricity bills, it's really poles and wires. And the chart that was in that article showed from 2005 to today that actually the expenses on generation have been going down while the expenses around transmission and distribution have been going up. Now, transmission is not our responsibility. That's usually our wholesaler does generation and transmission. That takes the power from the power plant to our substation locally, and then we take it from the substation to your house, eventually to every plug in your house, and that's the distribution. And just a little bit of history for us is we have a lot in the ground and above the ground that have been in place for 50 plus years that are beginning to fail. We see increased outages, and that's what a lot of the distribution co-ops are seeing is the need to replace that. Now, unfortunately, now that we're looking to replace that, this is a slide that shows the distribution materials, so what it takes to build those overhead lines and build those underground lines in the 4.5-year period from 2020 till May of 24 have seen significant increases. So overhead equipment, so the primary wire you see stretching from pole to pole has gone up 62% in that 5.5-year period. Transformers are up 99%. Cross arms up 103%. Surge arresters 89%, and secondary wire 32%. The same thing is being seen in the underground equipment. So the primary cable that's underground that you don't see, when we go to replace that, that's up 93% in that 5.5-year period. Excuse me, 4.5-year period. Transformers up 93%, red roll pipe 71%, and secondary service boxes up 113%. And our current suppliers are actually telling us they're seeing further increases in 25. So this was as of May 24. They're seeing upwards of 8, 9, 10, even 11%, 12% increase again this year. So again, all of this makes the costs that we incur increase. So getting back to those drivers I talked about in the previous slide, we'll talk about purchase power. So that's our largest cost. We are going to receive GCA when we purchase power. We're getting a 6.8% increase effective January 1, 2026. We can't do anything about that increase. That's given to us by our wholesale provider. Now, the one comment I want to make is how and when we use electricity affects the cost, not just how much we use. And this may explain a little bit about why we've also done the rate structure change that goes into effect January 1, is 60% of our power bill, what we pay our wholesaler, is based on our peak demand, not the energy we buy. So if our peak goes up, we pay more even if our total energy purchase for the month stays the same. So we could pay X dollars in January and X plus in February, but still use the same kilowatt hours. And I think this pie chart to the left helps us understand that of our cost, 44% is related to the cost to purchase power, of which 18% is that energy charge, kilowatt hour used, but 26% is based on when it's used. And then just following the pie kind of around clockwise, our next biggest expense, and we talk about those increases of that distribution system. So, this 3/4 of the pie is about 78% of our total expenses. Next slide is when we first introduced the budget, the 2026 budget to our board, it actually had in it the need for a 9.6% rate increase. And the board said, you know, we want you to go back and look at everything that you can do to reduce expenses. But they gave us 3 things that we could not touch. And that was things that would impact the reliability of our power to each and every one of our members, impact the safety of our employees or our members, and also not impacting employees, because it requires our stable workforce and knowledgeable workforce to have safe and reliable power to you as well. So we went back and we actually looked at every expense line item, and we reduced our operating expenses by about $120,000. We also looked at our capital needs. And again, what was being requested, and if it wasn't a critical need for safety and reliability, we took it out. And that was about $900,000 of capital that we took out of the 2026 budget. And then as a result of the capital coming out, we didn't need to borrow as much money. So we took money out of the need to borrow. And then we also increased other operating revenues. So right now, there is no incremental cost in our income statement for 2026 related to either of the 2 solar arrays. They are cost neutral. If we were to buy the power from a wholesaler, it would cost the same as it is for us to produce it. So there's no impact to members' rates related to those 2 projects. And then we also used a small amount of deferred revenue that I'll talk about a little bit in the next slide. But basically, these efforts took us down 2.4% to basically reduce the impact to our members in 2026. So what is deferred revenue? Deferred revenue helps smooth the impact of increasing costs. And I really underline the word smooth because it doesn't eliminate those increasing costs. It just means we can delay when we pass them on to our members. And maybe over time, through growth or other things, we would be able to apply them when there's less pressure on costs elsewhere. And deferred revenue, just so everyone understands, it comes from prior years when margins are above target. So if we had a margin to cover operating expenses, cash flow needs of, let's say, $500,000 in any given year, and because of weather patterns, tourism, or other reasons, we actually had $700,000 in profit, we would look at it at the end of the year to meet with the board and say, do we want to take $200,000 and move it into deferred revenue that we can use to smooth rate or expense increases and therefore rates in future years? And that's what we're doing this year. We're using $360,000 of that deferred revenue we had in 2026, which reduces the 26 member impact, reduces the 2026 member impact by 1.5%. And again, deferred revenue is member money, and it's used to support rate stability over time. And the key message here is we expect to continue to use deferred revenue thoughtfully to avoid rate spikes. It can't completely avoid rate increases, but it can try to smooth them out. And again, like this year, we're smoothing it out by 1.5%. And this is just a graphical presentation of what I just talked about. So when we first presented the budget to the board, it needed this 9.6% rate increase. And I put the breakdown of what made up that 9.6. The number one was we deferred. Last year, we did a 4.5% rate increase, but this budget really said we needed a 6.8. So we deferred 2.3. And this is, again, that smoothing. I can't get rid of it. I can smooth it. So we had to recover the 2.3. We had cost to purchase power increase 3.6. So those two right out of the gate, I'll call it, was 5.9%. And then we've got our operating expenses. We're requiring a 2.7% rate increase. Investment in reliability and our infrastructure was about a 1.6. And then we had volume growth and other revenue, which reduced it by 1.2. And then we needed an operating margin target to achieve, again, our cash flow needs for capital investment, paying off debt, and return of patronage capital, as we've been doing every year. So then we did what I just talked about was we reduced operating expenses $120,000. We reduced capital spending, the $900,000 in the debt, and we increased that other revenue, which took us to 8.8. And then we also squeezed that operating margin. Originally, we wanted a 2% operating margin. We went down to a 1.9. That took it down 0.1. And then the use of deferred revenue took us to this 7.2. And again, at this point, we believe the budget has the expenses in it, the cost in it we need to assure, again, that reliable, safe power to every one of our members. So what happens next? Well, we've published, the check mark is we published the proposed rates for member review. We arranged for this member forum, which is this session, which we are going to open it up shortly here for comments, questions, feedback. We'll make sure that that feedback is given to our board members. We are currently looking for final board approval of the rate increase at the next board meeting, which is November 19th. And if it's approved, the new rates go into effect on January 1 of 2026. And again, just the message here is our goal is transparency, which is why we met with you today to go through all of the drivers of the rate. We're looking for stability as much as we can, which is why we smooth it out with some deferred revenue. We're trying to meet those system needs. Again, that's safe, reliable power every day, 24 hours a day, while keeping rates as low as practical. We can't bottom them out because that begins to really impact the reliability and safety. The next slide, which is my last slide I have before I open it up to comments, questions, really takes one of the rate classes. So we have about 12,000 accounts, 9,000 of those are residential 11. And what I wanted to walk through is what's going to happen January 1. And I broke that up into 3 phases, which is January 1 on our 25 rates, January 1 on the rate structure change, which has been communicated and had previous forums, what that would look like. And then what would our rate increase look like in a average residential? And again, there's 9,000 members in here. And we're using numbers that are the average usage. But again, we've got lines 2, 3, and 4. So currently our current rate has a $40 monthly service availability charge and has an energy charge of 14.4 cents. And the current 2025 rate has no demand charge. The new rate structure, if we were able to implement a rate structure change on January 1, 26 without a rate increase, so all those things we're seeing increase in cost didn't occur, we would have actually kept a service availability fee at 40. We would have been able to lower the energy charge a little bit to 13.9 cents, and we would add that $1. What with this increase we're proposing, because to cover all these costs we just talked about, is, and the one thing to note is we're not touching the service availability charge for any of the rate classes. It's staying flat with what it was for 25. So in this rate class 11, which is most of our residential most of our residential members, it's staying at 40. The energy charge is going to about 15.4 cents, and the demand charge, as we've been communicating all year long, is going to be that $1. So below here in rows 6 through 11, I calculated that bill. And again, over that 9,000 members, they average over a 12-month period about 688 kilowatt hours of usage, or about 8,300 kilowatt hours a year. And in that peak period that the demand charge is going to apply, which is 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday, the average peak each month for this class of members is about 3.5. So on the 25 rate structure, this typical month here would be about bill of $139.13. And again, the rate structure is designed to be revenue neutral. Under the rate structure, it would be $139.22, 9-cent difference, which for all intents and purposes, I round to neutral. And the 26 rate increase, again, the service availability charge stays at 40, the 350 stays at 350, but the energy charge would increase from 95.72 to 106.08, or would be a bill of about $149.58, or an increase of about $10.36 on this rate class. And if I multiplied that by 12, it's about $125 a year increase with this proposed rate increase. again, I get to pause talking now for a minute or two, and just open it up to comments and questions that anyone would have. If you want me to go back to a slide, I'll be happy to, but I'm going to stop the sharing just so I get a better view of everybody on the Teams meeting. And thank you very much for your time. Allie, do you want people to raise their hand when they want to ask? Oh, yeah, good. Someone's already started.
So we've got Sue Navy. Go ahead, Sue.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, now I'm not muted?
Correct.
can hear
We can
you.
hear you.
Okay, okay. Well, hi. Thanks for having this meeting and I'm not going crazy over your rate increase. I just, once again, as I've done several different times, spoken to various ones of you, I'm just asking that there be some dispensation for seniors. There are plenty of seniors and these rate increases have an impact on more limited incomes. And so I would like you to try to figure something out, whether it's about this increase or in general, to give seniors a bit of a break. That's all.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Sue.
Yep.
I think I remember you from the last 2 years, so thank you.
Probably, yeah. And I've talked to Allie and Mike and what's his name? Yeah. Anyway.
Sue, I haven't looked at your account, and so I pause a little bit before saying this, but with the new rate structure design, there's really the demand charge plays more into, as Mark said, when you use the power and not how much you use. And so there's a relationship in terms of how your bill is affected by, on average, it's no effect. But if someone has what we call a good load factor, that is a less peaky load shape, their peak usage isn't as high over their average rate of consumption as the average, their bill actually goes down. And so I know we had this conversation with one retired member, and that's what they saw. And I think it's because they weren't going to work every day and then coming home and doing everything at night. And so I don't know how that'll affect you. I think there's a possibility that with our retired members, they will average at least a flatter load shape, and they might actually see their bill go down. Again, Sue, I can't say for sure if that's what you'll see, but I think that kind of makes sense that that could happen.
Oh, I hope so. I'm not speaking, just on my behalf. I'm just looking
Right.
at the more general population, and I'd like to see some benefit, for people who have gotten this far in life. So, thanks.
Thanks, Sue.
Thank you, Sue.
Looks like we have a comment or a question from Jeremy. Jeremy, you can unmute and go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I'll turn my camera on too here. Question not specific about this rate change, but the peak demand pricing. It's listed as $1. That's $1 per what? Is that per kilowatt hour or?
No, it's $1 per your peak usage during the entire month for the 1 hour period from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday that you use the most power in 1 hour. So in that example I showed where the average for this rate class is 3.5. So it would take that one time during that period of 5 to 9 that you used 3.5 kilowatt hours in an hour, which means 3.5 kilowatts times $1. So it'd be a $3.50 charge.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's based on the highest amount of electricity you use from 5 to 9, Monday through Saturday a month.
For the entire month. So if you happen your first day of the month, you use 3.5 during that window, and the rest of the month you use 2, it's set at 3.5.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's
And
just
that's-
one, it's just the one single hour out of each month, right?
Okay. I also had a question kind of unrelated as well, but something I wanted to chat with someone about the solar farm on County Road 17. Is that something I can ask questions about now, or is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I doesn't. They're gonna get covered in snow. They're gonna get grown over by weeds. Like, what was the thought process? I mean, obviously, you got a discounted unit there, and I'm all for solar power. I'm not anti-solar power at all, but that
Yeah.
I definitely question how that is going to work, especially during the winter months. Do you guys have a plan for snow removal for this, for weed mitigation? It didn't
So-
look like put any sort of weed barrier down underneath the gravel. That's all disturbed soil. You're going to have all sorts of weeds growing up that are going to be taller than knee-high solar panels.
Yeah, good point. We will have to kill weeds as they grow. That system was so much less costly to construct versus the traditional metal racking elevated
Oh,
system. Mark, was it like a third or half
Yeah.
the cost of a traditional system? And
Yeah, about
so
40%. Yeah.
because of that cost differential, we're able to get good economics on that project without counting on any winter production. So
Okay.
it
So
will,
you're
it
just
will,
gonna let it be covered in
yeah,
snow, but
yeah. There's not really enough room in there to go through and do snow removal. I mean, you know, some years when we don't have a lot of snow, we might have enough room for that to melt a little and slide off and get
Yeah.
some production. But we've modeled it as no production in the winter, and it'll still break even for us.
Okay. Okay. And if we don't have a low snow year, that's just a bonus?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Looks like we have a question from Lois. Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to know if the charge for the peak hours is going to be listed separately on the bill.
Yes, it will be. Yeah, it'll be a separate line item on the bill where you'll see both what your peak hour usage was during that window for the month, and you'll see a separate charge down in the line items.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And you'll actually start seeing that hopefully in the bills that go out this month, but it'll have a zero charge, but it'll give you an idea what it'll look like before that goes into effect for the month of January.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, there's also a question in the chat. Can you confirm that last year's increase plus this year's proposed rate increase exceeds 11%?
Last year was 4.5, this year's 7.2. It comes out to 11.7%. That is correct.
It might be worth mentioning in light of that question that nationwide, the compound annual growth rate in utility electric rates across the country has averaged 8% over the last 4 years, I think.
Per year.
per year.
Yeah.
And we're well below that. I mean, this year we're getting close to that annual number. Last year, 4.5 was the highest of the other three. I think one
5 was the year before, 4.5.
Oh, 5
and
was
then-
what?
Yeah,
Okay. And then 1.9 or something. But anyway,
before that. Yeah.
yeah.
And it looks like we have another question from Mark Hillis.
Yes, thank you. I'm Mark Hillis, and with me is my wife, Patricia Aldrich. The Aldrich family have been very happy owners in Mount Crested Butte since the early 1970s. So I'm sort of an interloper here. I was just curious as to the proposed rate increase. How does that compare to the proposed rate increase for commercial industrial users?
So for most of the commercials, so what we do is every couple of years, we do a cost of service study to see what costs each of our rate groups are incurring for us, and are we recovering that cost from them? So again, I'll be very transparent. It's a slightly lower increase for some of our commercial accounts because that study showed we were over recovering a little bit from them. And we don't try and make that change all in one year. We just slowly try to make that equal. I mean, our ultimate goal is to recover 100% of the costs incurred by each rate class. But we only get that information every couple of years and we try and align it. So theirs is actually a little bit lower than the residential 11.
And one other question: are there any planned data centers that would impact your area of distribution?
We have not been contacted by any data centers. I will say that our power supplier, Tri-State Generation and Transmission Association, has developed what I think is a very novel and innovative approach to what they're calling high impact loads, which includes data centers, but could include other things, large pumping, oil and gas pumping stations or other things too, that are large loads that come on all at once. And the objective of this tariff that they've developed, which is now at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission awaiting approval, is that they will collect what they need from those high impact loads so that it doesn't impact the other members that, like GCEA, that may not get that, a data center. We've not been contacted about a data center because I don't think the communication here is quite robust enough for a data center to look here. But whatever the reason, no one's reached out to us on a data center.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I saw a hand up there for just a second and then it disappeared. So if there was someone looking to ask a question, go ahead and raise your hand again.
So Mike, I saw that was W Pond who had asked the question in the chat earlier, and now in the chat, this member saying that was me, W Pond. I can't unmute my microphone. But you're welcome to, if you want to ask another question via chat, we'll relay that.
we could try unmuting on our end if you'd like us to. Oh, no, it's not giving me that. Well, it's not giving me that option. I don't know if you've got that option, Ellie. Okay. I guess, yeah, if you want to type something in the chat.
Unmute.
Yeah, it's not giving me that option. It lets me mute people, but
Not unmute. Okay.
it's not gonna let me unmute.
Looks like we have another comment from Mark Hillis.
Oh, we don't
Question.
have, there we go, there we go.
Nice.
So my question is, are you gonna have any, I'm not gonna say a workshop, but any information that will help us minimize our 5 to 9 usage? And
Yes.
I mean, because that's gonna be important.
Yeah, so for right now, we did do 3 workshops, and understand that, you know, despite efforts to get the word out, that doesn't always get to everyone. So we have recorded and made available on our website some recordings that address a little more of the reasons and the opportunities for GCEA behind that rate structure. It really comes down to the idea that by working together, we can lower our costs and help us keep our rates down. That's a really brief summary of one of the presentations, but there are other presentations out there that get more into details about things you can do. And those are available on our website. Go ahead, Allie.
And I just threw the link in the chat so you can directly link to that web page. And there's 4 different presentations that you can view.
Thanks for that question.
Yes, thank you.
And I was just going to note, just so everyone, a chat, it was Debbie Dodson who just wrote, not so much a question, but a statement. As someone blessed with a second home in Lake City, when we are there, we are out enjoying the outdoors all day, which will leave us doing laundry, etc., within the peak time. And as well, we pay the base $40 for around 8 months a year when we use no electricity. So it's just more of a comment. I just want to read it and make sure everyone on the GCA team saw that. And thank you, Debbie, for that comment.
Yeah, and those videos we talked about might give you some ideas too. I do understand that that's why we peak as a collectively as a system, is whether it's recreation or work, we all kind of come home at the end of the day and start our, you know, consuming activities. And so there are some automation opportunities that are talked about in those videos, timers and programmable thermostats and things like that, that can help, you know, even in that situation. There, you know, are possibly some other behavioral things too, where you just kind of can maybe spread that out a little thoughtfully. But yeah, do understand that happens for a number of reasons, and that's what drives our cost. And as we're really striving to keep our costs as low as possible, this helps incentivize members to help us to lower our costs. Hopefully, you'll find a good way to manage that.
And I was just going to say, W. Pond posted a question. So the last increase in the proposed increase is 430% higher than the federal inflation rate of 2.7, which I think is a somewhat questionable number regardless. What does your crystal ball say about the next few years? If nothing changes, will we be seeing high double-digit increases overall? So I wish I had a crystal ball, but I do. I'm going to pull up a slide that I have in my back up in my slide deck. Let me just find it here. I think it's a worthwhile. Yeah, so let me get back to escape this. Let me go back and share this. And this is a little bit about what happens when we use deferred revenue sometimes. So let's see if I can get here. So if I'm showing the right slide, you'll see a slide that says cumulative 13-year cumulative rate increase versus cumulative inflation. Is that what everyone's seeing? So when in the years before 2020, we were averaging a small 1.5% increase, but we were very much in line by 2020 with what the cumulative inflation had been since 2014. And what you're seeing now is with this spike in inflation that started in 21, 22, 23, we actually did everything we could to keep rates down in somewhat of a hope that that inflation would begin to level off after the pandemic, after the supply chain issues, and we continue to see them increase. So right now, through 26, we're still 5 points below that cumulative inflation from 2014. So I just want to say is we do everything we can, and that's why you see a little bit of an imbalance, sometimes a higher increase in this year than inflation, because we held back some of that increase from previous years. And I will, as I said before, smoothing we can do, we can't eliminate those costs. We do look for ways. I mean, this may be small, but we actually, our IT team this year changed all of our phone systems, changed the internet, and improved all of our services and saved us $15,000 a year. So we're always looking for those opportunities, but there aren't any large dollar amount ones right now that we are aware of. But again, hopefully this answers part of your question. As far as the crystal ball, I wish I had one. I think from all the indications, all the articles we've read, is the impact and cost needs for poles and wires is going to continue to increase. I just can't say how much of an impact that will have on future rates. But I have a concern it could continue to have an impact of increased rates. Hopefully that answers that question. And thank you. That was a great question.
And it looks like we have a question from Kelly.
This is just kind of an idea. I don't know if it would even be possible. But in January, like that's like the height of winter where we're all heating our houses, doing all that, and then having a major, I'd say a big rate increase. I don't know if you guys would even be able to postpone it until like the middle of the year, so then we could get used to the idea of the change in peak hours and all that first, and then when in July or whatever, then add in the rate increase. It's just an idea. I don't know if it's even possible, but just because winter can be so hard on bills and everything.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, we've actually done that in recent years where we've postponed it till May 1st in a few years and March 1st one year. The challenge with doing that is that if we have to collect for the expenses of the year a certain amount, our biggest sales month is January. And so if we don't start the increase then the increase has to be bigger later. Or if it's not bigger later, and we have to use more of the deferred revenue, which eats away at that cushion for smoothing down the road. But we've tried that in future years. We even talked about it in the boardroom this year. It didn't seem doable this year. But we will certainly relay that, that request to the board.
Mark, do you see that Sue Navy has a comment in the
Yeah.
chat?
I just saw that and I was going to. So Sue Navy wrote, I've read about other places that use this system, and I'm assuming that means the demand charge, but only during the work week, not on weekends. And just saying, and we also don't do it on Sundays. So it is right now Monday through Saturday. Again, if not knowing what that would do, but we already don't do it on Sundays. And again,
Yeah,
we'll relay that to the board as a comment too.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so the reason we are doing it Monday through Saturday is because that's our wholesale power structure. So we'll get billed on our peak demand on Saturday. So if we didn't have a peak demand charge on Saturday, that would effectively encourage us to let down our guard on Saturday, and that could potentially then result in, a peak, a cost that we could have otherwise avoided. So that's why it's structured the way it is. But as Mark
Thanks,
pointed
Mike.
out, Sunday, I'm glad that question came up. Sunday is all the day off peak. So do all you want on Sunday.
Thanks, Mike.
I've been watching for hands, but not the chat. So
Yeah.
gonna have to go back and forth.
Yeah.
But
Thanks, Sherry, for keeping an eye on that chat.
any other questions or comments? If not, maybe we'll give a last call. All right. Well, thanks so much, everyone.
And thank you. And it really appreciate you as members. I like active members that come in, want to understand and ask questions. And I really appreciate your time this evening for joining us. Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great evening.